and then downstream from that are hormones. Now, I always say thyroid and hormones kind of play in the same sandbox. They influence each other, which they do. So just like we said, if you're estrogen dominant and or low progesterone, that's going to interfere with T4 to T3 conversion. That estrogen dominance also produces more thyroid binding globulin, which can bind to your thyroid hormone. Low testosterone sets you up for a greater risk of Hashimoto's or other autoimmune conditions. So they play in the same sandbox, but the thyroid's still at the top. We always have to start there because if that's off, if the thyroid is off, we'll see women go into early menopause, or we'll see, progesterone levels that look like an 80-year-old and someone who's 25. So it's
Yeah.
all
Right.
it's all dictated by the thyroid. So you have to kind of start with the thyroid. Now, at our clinic, as you know, we do both at the same time. We're going to look at your
Yep.
hormones, we're going to look at your thyroid, and we're going to say, okay, let's balance both. We're not going to be just addressing thyroid and wait on the hormones. We're going to do both at the same time and continue watching them as they shift. Because as you start to optimize the thyroid, the hormones become more optimized. So, we might have to adjust your dose of hormone replacement as your thyroid becomes better and better.
Yeah, and that's what happened. I remember myself like titrating it. You know that expression, medicine is an art? I think functional medicine really does treat medicine as an art, and each person as an individual, because we all have our own bio individuality. That's what fascinates me too. So I
Yep.
feel like, we tweaked until we got to the right thing. And people also have to be patient with that as well, because we're used to, again, conventional medicine treating the symptoms.
Yep.
Oh, you're depressed. We're not going to check your thyroid fully. Here's this, prescription for this antidepressant. And I'm not, and here's another thing I want to talk about. And you and I are on the same page with this. I'm not against prescriptions. Like levothyroxine is a prescription,
Right.
but I'm against band-aids, I guess. I want something. If I'm going to take something, I want it to do something for my body. And I see thyroid replacement as just replacing what the body should be doing, but for whatever reason isn't doing anymore. And that to me is very different than just taking a pill for an antidepressant.
Well, you said it beautifully. I can't say it any better. That's exactly it. It's we are not anti-medication whatsoever. We're anti-Band-Aid medication. So, when you place thyroid hormone like liothyronine, even T4, I don't love T4 only, but we'll still use T4 in the right combination, or natural desiccated thyroid medication, or compounded T4, T3, whatever that combination that works for you, we're going to use it. But that falls under the hormone replacement category. So I almost like to shift people's mindset when they're like, "Ooh, do I have to take that medication the rest of my life?" I'm like, "Well, no, you're taking a hormone the rest of your life. It's a hormone
Sure.
that your body is no longer making. It's not a medication." It'd be the same thing as if your child had type 1 diabetes and they were told to go on insulin. That's a hormone. Yeah, you have to get it
Right.
from a pharmacy, but it's still a hormone. You wouldn't say, "Oh, no, I don't want that medication," because then your child would die without insulin. So it's the same thing. We're replacing hormones that just aren't being made by our body properly.
Yep. It's funny, just speaking of type 1 diabetes, I grew up, one of my best friends in school, they called it juvenile diabetes back in the
Yeah.
day,
Yep.
but I now know it was type 1. And, it's crazy. Like her snacks would be like orange juice and peanut butter crackers and stuff like that. But I do remember her having, I would go with her and she would have to take her insulin at certain points throughout the day. So, and
Mhm.
now I think they're saying that they can benefit from a lower carb diet, even though it's not type 2. But that's a whole other rabbit trail. But one thing I wanted to say that we mentioned earlier too, Amy, was before, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but before Rockefeller, was it Rockefeller that came along and introduced
Yep.
petroleum, and
Carnegie, yep.
homeopathy was the norm in this country. It wasn't woo woo. Like all the naturopathic doctors, the that was all mainstream. So it's only really recently, when you think about history,
Yeah.
that we've come to think about functional medicine as like, we've come to accept conventional medicine as the norm, and functional medicine, I think, is being more accepted now, but as something different.